Hello and good day, students of drama class A and class B. Now I'm going to give some presentations on the topic of comedy and tragedy. Um, in the last 2 weeks, we already discussed the topic of definitions of drama as well as the elements of drama, and we learn how drama is different from other genres in literature because here the the literary works is meant to be performed in front of audience. And this time we are going to have a discussion on comedy and tragedy, the two major, what is it like, categories or genre in drama. And in a minute, I'm going to share with you um, the material that I'm prepared based on the two chapters that I have shared with you under this channel in the Teams. Yeah. If you have what is it time, and if you would like to have a better understanding about the difference between comedy and tragedy, you can also read the journal article that I uploaded in the channel of General in the Teams. It was written by Jerome Stolnitz, sorry, Jerome Stolnitz, entitled Notes on Comedy and Tragedy. And then over there, you will be introduced to or you will read what is it? You will read about the discussion about how comedy and tragedy um, could be different and where they at some point actually are similar one to another. But for this presentation that I'm going to give to you soon, I base it on the two chapters that I uploaded under the channel of comedy and tragedy in the themes. And what I'm going to present are covering only main points, and I leave the details for you to study yourself. So let me share with you the file or the PPT that I have prepared for this. Okay, so when we talk about comedy, we cannot leave behind what Aristotle had written in his masterpiece, Poetics. On that work, Aristotle argued that comedy as a genre was originated in the Phallic processions and light treatment of the people at his era, around the 7th and 6th century before Common Era or before Christ. And according to Aristotle, even though this kind of a processions, what is it like, is if seen by itself an obscene thing, something which is kind of low or ugly by standard, by moral standard, for example, it is still seen as something that is positive for society. Why? Because this kind of procession, this kind of comedy, and this kind of a performance could bring happiness for the people who are among the audience. And according to Aristotle, he further said that there are three subgenres in comedy, which are farce, romantic comedy, and satire. But then later on, the next slide, I'm going to discuss the 7 types of comedy. And yeah, it is. I think it's kind of a development from what Aristotle had already argued in his Poetics. Yeah. While Aristotle was positive on comedy. Another philosopher, Plato, saw that comedy is a kind of what is it? A kind of a distraction to the self. So he saw comedy as something which is bad, which is ugly, because it also produces emotion. And according to Plato, if you know his philosophy, Plato, what is it like, kind of um, what is it like, underappreciate emotion, meaning that he actually, what is it, believe that emotion is not a good means to get good knowledge about things. So he, what is it like, despised comedy because it produces emotion, and this overrides rational self-control and learning. And if you read later the journal article written by Jerome Stolnitz that I also mentioned earlier in this slide, as mimesis, as imitation of life, tragedy is better than comedy. I mean, like in explaining or in reflecting life, tragedy is better than comedy. Why is it better? You can read it by yourself in the Jerome Stolnitz piece. Yeah. And then there are 7 types of comedy. The first one is romantic comedy. In this kind of comedy, uh, the theme is about loves, or yeah, kind of usually love between two agreeable people, or two what is it like, two protagonists, we can call it like that. um, and there is a female hero, which is a heroine, and then to that love, what is it like, there were obstacles that made it almost difficult for the two lovers to maintain or to keep their loves, but then they keep on struggling, and then they never surrender, and in the end they found a happy ending, and usually it ends with a wedding or marriage, the scene of marriage. I think you can find many examples in even today's what is it like, movie, this kind of what is it like, romantic comedy. If you if you like to watch Shrek, for example, this one of the example of romantic comedy. If you from the like much older period, if you like to watch Sleepless in Seattle, yeah, that's also an example of romantic comedy. I think this is one of the most what is it like, popular subgenre in Hollywood kind of a movie, yeah, industry. The second type of comedy is what we call as comedy of manners. Here, the focus is on the dialogue, which is sweet and sparkling, meaning that it's actually it relies a lot on the dialogue, and then the focus also on the relationship and intrigues of men and women of upper class. If you like to watch or to read maybe later, what is it like, Oscar Wilde's The Importance of Being Earnest, you will be able to see an example of comedy and manners, how the characters, how the intrigues between male and female characters there actually become the most dominant, um, what is it like, the dominant feature of comedy of manners. Yeah. And then the third one is satirical comedy. It is actually a development of satire. In this kind of comedy, what happened is the ridiculing of political or philosophical doctrines, and also it affects deviation from the social orders and of course also the deviators of this. Yeah. So it makes fun of what is it like maybe standard of philosophy or of political views or something like that. It makes one like that. It what is it like? It's supported, but actually it want to what is it like discourage it. So this kind of satire. It's like that. Um, it is cynical to some point, but a little bit different. Just satire is like kind of a when you say something, but actually you want to say the otherwise, the other way around. And then the fourth one is farce. The four types of comedy is farce, which is referring to simple and hearty laughter that employ exaggeration and caricature to the sorry to the comedy. Sometimes it also includes some kind of slapsticks. If you like to watch what is it like Dono Casino Indro, I think it's one of the example of farce. Yeah, there is exaggeration and caricature or caricatural characters there. Yeah. The fifth types of comedy is what we call as comedy of humors, which focus on the character of range of characters, and each of whom exhibits two or more overriding traits or humors that dominates their personality, desires, or conduct. And this actually something that what is it like? If you are familiar with what is it like psychology, there are some four types of people, four types of personalities, like people who have humor or characters of sanguine, phlegmatic, what is it, melancholic, uh, and I mean like this is based on that, yeah. So the kind of the employ or the employment of those kind of personality or traits that becomes predominant. And then the six types of comedy is what we call as sentimental comedy. This actually was born as a reaction to comedy of manner, because if we remember, the comedy of manners actually talk about intrigues of men and women of upper class. Here, in the sentimental comedy, um, it is about the middle class men and women, not the upper class. Yeah, and the aim is later on to condemn human vices and flatter or praise human virtues. So it is more kind of a reaction or response toward comedy of manners, yeah, sentimental comedy. And the seventh one is tragic comedy. That's also called as dark comedy, or sometimes also called as bitter comedy, because here what happened is the treating or yeah treating disturbing or sinister subjects with bitter amusement. So it makes fun or it try to what is it like yeah make some kind of light views on sinister or heavy subject like death or illness. So if say for example about the pandemic these days, then it try to see the what is it like this bitter or this sinister situation from the glasses from the spectacles of comedy. That is a bitter comedy or tragic comedy. So this basically what makes comedy. Yeah. For more about this and also for examples about this, please read the material. Now I'm going to move on to tragedy. In this genre, the mood is different from in yeah, it's different from the one in comedy. In the comedy, the mood is kind of light, and then um, what is it? Some kind of entertaining, happy ending. Here in tragedy, the mood is serious, is sometimes also occupying, um, like that. And then the character, different from in comedy, where it talks about, like, sometimes also about common people, for people who just like us. In the tragedy, the characters are usually exceptional characters, like people of high rank, people of what is it, like who are considered as great, but then they are having flaws or some weaknesses, internal weaknesses, and then this that latter lead them into making a decision that what is it that yeah, that eventually bring them into disaster, and not what is it, yeah, also death, yeah, not only disaster but also death. And this is what happened. It is different from in comedy. You should have a happy ending. In here, it ends with disaster or the death of the main character, or the suffering, yeah, suffering of the main character. And it questions about the meaning of existence, the nature of it, morality, and social or psychological relationship. So it is deep, yeah. In tragedy, the topic is deep, is heavy, is something that you cannot take it lightly. And not only the topics or the subjects that are hard or difficult, but also the way they see it is very serious. It is different from um, dark comedy or tragic comedy, where those sinister or heavy subjects are treated with from the point of view of comic, like a comedy, something like that, from the light view. But here, um, difficult and heavy and sinister subject were seen with like yeah, serious mood. The word tragedy itself is derived from the Greek tragoidia, yeah, tragoidia, which means actually good song. Um, why is it called like that? Because at that time there were festivals, and then in this festival there were groups who perform tragedy, and then the winner of this festival then got this fruit. Yeah, so that's why it's called as fruit. And tragedy usually solemn, serious, poetic, and philosophic. So again, it is very different, yeah, different mood from comedy. And the action in tragedy are meant to arouse twofold emotions, twins emotions, which are pity and fear at the same time. Yeah. So at one point, the audience feel frightened with the suffering, with the death of characters. Yeah. But also at the same time, he or she or they will feel pity toward those characters. So those two things, fear and pity at the same time. And then later on, this will lead into what the philosopher define as catharsis. Um, that means purgation or cleansing. So when after you watch comedy, you will feel like what is it, like you were cleaned, you were purgated, like you were. It's like, thanks God, it's over, or something like that. Oh, that's me, something like that. Yeah. So there is this kind of a catharsis, emotional, physical, not physical, sorry, philosophy, psychological cleansing. That's what we call as catharsis. Yeah. So that's what we feel after we watch comedy. Sorry, tragedy. It's different from comedy, because in comedy, when you watch it, you are amused, you are happy, but you don't feel like you don't have the feeling of fear or pity toward the fate of the characters. Okay, okay, this is actually something that a point that I got from Jerome Stolnitz, and Jerome Stolnitz actually talked from Aristotle. Yeah, when we agree that literature is actually a mimesis of real life, mimesis means kind of imitation of real life, we will see that drama or play can actually also be seen as mimesis of our life, and how comedy and tragedy are different in their mimesis of our real life or in their imitating of our real life um, is or can be explained from the perspective of ethos and dianoia of the main character of those comedies and tragedies. So in comedy, the main character is seen as someone who have what is it like kind of a good intention, but yeah, good intention. But then what is it like at some point uh, he doesn't have enough uh, dianoia. Yeah, so I will explain first. What is ethos? Ethos is kind of a value or standard or some kind of a goal, something like that. So we want to have or to get something which is good for our life and for others. That is ethos. So when you are what is it like seen as someone with ethos, it means like you are someone who hold value, you hold standard, you want something which is good, not only for you yourself, but also for others. That's why it is also called like around someone who like that is called as ethical people. So ethos, yeah. And yeah, we want to have that. We want to achieve that ethos, right? Everyone have that. I mean, like we want it. Both comic hero and tragic hero, they have good ethos. I mean, like everyone has, right? We want it. I mean, like we don't want something which can harm our life, ourselves, and also our yeah people around us, right? But then the problem here is on the dianoia. I mean, like dianoia refers to knowledge, and there are two kinds of knowledge. First is external or factual knowledge, and then the second one is reflective knowledge. External or factual knowledge refer to knowledge of the thing itself outside of us. So, for example, if there is something related to a kingdom, for example, then we have some kind of a factual knowledge about the kingdom, how to run a kingdom, who are the leaders of the kingdom, how to make policy, how to rule people, and so on and so forth. That is factual knowledge. Yeah. But then reflective knowledge is kind of our knowledge on how to, to to do something, right? So it is more kind of inner knowledge about ourselves, not only about the outside of us. So to give another example or what is it illustration about the difference between in external and reflective knowledge is like this. External knowledge or factual knowledge is like when you know how to solve a mathematic problem, for example. That is the external knowledge or factual knowledge. You know how to solve a problem. That is the factual knowledge. But then the factual knowledge is like the knowledge about ourselves, like how, why, and yeah, I mean like who we are, something like that is reflective knowledge. And in order for us to achieve ethos in our life, we need to have a good dianoia in terms of good external or factual knowledge and good reflective knowledge. So both of them need to be there. We cannot just rely on external or factual knowledge and what is it, disregard reflective knowledge. We need to have them both of them at the same time, so that our ethos will be good. The problem with comedy or the comic hero, particularly comic hero, is that they have good ethos. I mean, like they have ethos. Sometimes they also have external or factual knowledge, but then they are lack of reflective knowledge. That's according to uh, Jerome Stolnitz in his article. It is different from, oh, wait a minute. Yeah, sorry, in comedy, there is no knowledge at all. Sorry, I actually revised my previous statement. In comedy, Dianoia doesn't exist in the characters, in the main character of comedy. There is no knowledge at all. They want something which is good, but they do not know how to achieve it. If you watch Charlie Chaplin is an example of comic or comedy, sorry, and he is a comic hero. You know that he wants something which is good, but then he doesn't know how to do that. He doesn't even know about himself. Yeah, he just, what is it like? Yeah, flow with the, yeah, with the, yeah, with the flow. He just goes with the flow. And that's what I want to say. Goes with the flow. Yeah. So he doesn't have any standing. If in the end it ends good, then it is just, yeah, because it is a matter of um, incidents or coincidence. But in tragedy, what happened is that the tragic hero, it has ethos, of course, and it has dianoia to some point, but only to the extent of the factual or external knowledge. So he got the knowledge on the external or factual field or sphere, but then he doesn't have this reflective knowledge. He doesn't know about that. He doesn't have a good understanding about himself and others. He just know about how to do something, but he doesn't know how or why he does this thing. That is, he doesn't have the reflective knowledge. And that's, if we go back to our previous example, what is it, explanation, the character in tragedy, or that we call as a tragic hero, is exceptional. So that means he knows a lot, he is great, but he flaw, he have weaknesses, and these weaknesses in the form of reflective knowledge. He doesn't know about himself. If you watch, for example, or if you, well, we will read later King Lear, for example, later, you will know that King Lear is someone who, king, he is exceptional, he is great, he is the ruler of a kingdom of English, of England. But then he doesn't have this kind of reflective knowledge, that he he was easily deceived by his two uh, two daughters. So he doesn't know about himself, how he act like that. You will see that it is a kind of stupid thing, but at the same time, we know that it is because of the lack of reflective knowledge, and that what make what is it, uh, tragedy. The tragic hero have good ethos, have half of the dianoia, which is in the factual and external sphere knowledge, yeah? But then he doesn't have this reflective knowledge. Comedy, in the end, on the other hand, the character, the comic hero, it has ethos, but it doesn't have dianoia almost at all. Okay, that's my explanation about comedy and tragedy. And again, I encourage you to read yourself and study yourself the material that I share with you, both in the channel of this class, comedy and tragedy, but also in the channel of um, general. Yeah. Thank you, and I hope that this will help you to understand this topic. See you.